Hi, my name is Paul Cook and I'm part of the Customer Solutions and Innovations group at MetricStream, and I'm going to be taking you through MetricStream's audit management solution. The MetricStream audit management solution is fully aligned to the Institute of Internal Auditors and enables you to manage the entire audit lifecycle, from managing your audit universe and its interrelationships, to a risk-based audit scoping and audit planning process. Resources can be managed through Gantt charts and calendaring, and auditors given access to complete work papers and tasks. Any audit issues identified can then be managed and a final audit report generated. The audit solution, along with all other MetricStream solutions, sits on the MetricStream platform, giving further key functionalities such as access control, reporting and dashboards, and notification capabilities. The audit solution also comes with a number of pre-built personas. We have the audit head who gets very high-level metrics and MI reports from the system, and I'll log in as the audit head in a moment. We also have the audit manager who can see the audit planning side of things, also involved in the audit scoping and generation of the final audit report. We have the auditor who actually performs the field work, documents the evidence and results, and generates the issues and findings. And then we've then got the auditee, so that's the person actually being audited, and we enable issues to go to them for review and feedback between the auditor and the auditee. We have other personas as well, but these are the main four personas which I'm going to focus on for this particular demonstration. So as mentioned, I'll start off by logging in as the audit head. First of all, just to give you a quick user interface overview, and then I'll give you a view of just some of the high-level reports that an audit head or an audit director would likely be interested in. The MetricStream solution is 100% web-based, so you access it via a web browser. In logging in, depending on your user role, will very much depend on what information you see. As mentioned, I'm logged in now as an audit head, so I can see very high-level reports and very high-level MI metrics and so on. And you'll see as I log in as some of the other users, they get a lot more granular views of the data. In logging in, you're generally presented with a dashboard, as we can see here, and these dashboards are completely interactive, so I can drill into the reports, and I can filter and move these reports around as needed to give me the specific view of the data that I'm looking for. Every user who logs into MetricStream also gets a number of key features. The first one is the My Tasks bar at the top here. So whenever you assign a task to a user, so for example, if you assign an audit to an auditor, it will appear in this My Tasks bar. And we fully color code this, so items in here in green are things that have been newly assigned to the user. Items in red are those items that are perhaps past a due date that's been set. Those tasks are also presented within a calendar view. This is very similar to Lotus Notes or Outlook Calendar, and will give you a view of perhaps the duration of tasks and tasks that may be coming up in the coming months. These calendars can also be group or team calendars and can be managed centrally. We also have the ability here to upload help guides, particularly useful for those users who may not be coming in on a regular basis, so you can put step-by-step walkthrough guides and attach them to the solution here. We also have search capabilities, including advanced search capabilities, whereby if you're an auditor and perhaps you've uploaded an Excel file or a Word document as evidence, MetricStream will actually index that file and enable you to search within those documents using this advanced search feature. So just to go back to the dashboards, as I mentioned, all the reports are live, real time, and you can actually report on any single field within the MetricStream solution. And these dashboards can be interactive. So here, for example, I'm seeing an overview of my audits by location, perhaps by auditable entity. And I can then begin to drill in. So I can drill into Italy, and I can see that Italy perhaps has 7 audits within the billing auditable entity or billing department. And then likewise, I can drill into France, and I can see France has 12 audits within the billing entity, and all the other reports are also now filtered on France. I can also personalize these views. So if, for example, I don't want this to be a bar chart, I can very quickly click here on the configure button, and I can adjust this perhaps to a pie chart, for example. And you can see that adjustment's instant. We've also got the ability to export these reports into JPEG, PDF, Excel, and so on, as well as emailing these reports directly to people. If I click the Home tab, just to give you some kind of high-level metrics here, so here we can see things like time utilization, how long is it taking to do certain tasks within the audit program. If I scroll down, we can see some examples of some tabular reports, as well as some metrics right at the bottom here. So here we can see, for example, what percentage of audits started on time or what percentage of audits were late in starting. If I click into this tabular report, just to highlight that these tabular reports, you've got the ability to go ahead and sort the columns. You can also remove any columns which perhaps aren't relevant to the report, as well as apply filters here, so keyword filtering. And again, in the same way as the graphical reports, we can also export these into multiple formats, directly into Excel, into PDF, or email them to people as well. So that's just an overview of the user interface, as well as the view that perhaps someone like an audit head or an audit director would get of the solution. If I now log out and log in as an audit manager, I'm going to go through some of the tasks that perhaps an audit manager would be doing. And the first of which is the management of the audit universe. So within the metric stream solution, we give you the ability to manage and store the audit universe, and we can see the individual auditable entities here, and their names, perhaps what their last rating was, and when their last audit was, and perhaps when the next proposed audit is. This audit universe and all the interrelationships can be viewed in what we call the data browser, and this is visible and can be displayed on the left-hand side here. And if I just click here on auditable entity, that now loads for us. And what we can do is we can begin to drill into this audit or into these auditable entities and begin to see the interrelationships that there are. So for example, we've got an auditable entity here of card services. And if I expand this, I can see that perhaps we've got a number of risks aligned to card services. And I can drill into the accounting risk, and I can see perhaps there's a number of controls supporting that particular risk or mitigating that risk. Perhaps this risk sits within a particular business unit or particular function within the organization. And also there's a number of processes aligned to this risk and this auditable entity as well. And I can continue to drill into this. So I can then drill into the processes and begin to see perhaps what other risks this particular process is aligned to. So we can do this for all of our auditable entities, and these relationships can be one-to-one, one-to-many, as well as many-to-many, and we can pivot this view. So I've come in and looked at it from an auditable entity viewpoint, but at the same time I can perhaps view a listing of all of my controls, and this is perhaps my control library that's now loaded. And in the same way I can drill into these controls and perhaps see what risks are linked to this particular control, where this control sits within the organization, and perhaps the questions and procedures that we may be using to actually test that this control is in place and is working within the organization. So once we've gone ahead and we've got that audit universe in place and we've defined our auditable entities, and we can then go ahead and begin our risk-based scoping exercise. So if I click the scoping tab here, you'll see that I have the ability to actually go ahead and create an audit risk assessment. And the first task I have here is to select the organization to which I'm doing this assessment for. And if I just click the magnifying glass here, I can select, in this case, perhaps banking and financials as my business unit. And what this is now doing is it's loading all of my auditable entities, so I can see all of my auditable entities here. And if I go ahead and click into one of these, such as the retail banking operations, I can see the individual risks which are linked to this particular auditable entity. And I can click onto these risks and I can begin to give a risk assessment against each of these risks. So I can go ahead and I can give it perhaps an impact rating. In this case, I could say it's catastrophic, and a likelihood, and I could say perhaps it's almost certain. And we can see that that's giving that particular risk a rating of very high. And I can continue and go through these risks, perhaps the equity risk. I can say that's insignificant, and that's unlikely or likely, and we can see that's giving it an overall rating of very low. As we're doing this, the overall business unit is getting a total risk score, in this case medium, it's taking an average. But also if I click on the auditable entity itself is also getting a rolled up score, which in this case is medium. And we have the ability to go in and also override this particular score as well. So I can go through and I can risk assess all of my auditable entities, and from that I can then begin to decide perhaps what entities should be audited this year versus those that perhaps should be audited every 2 years versus every 3 years. From here I can begin to create my audit plan, and if I click onto the Plan and Schedule tab, this is where I can begin to do that process. So I can go ahead and I can create a brand new audit plan, but just to save some time I've actually got one here that's already started. So if I click into this one, you'll see that we basically have 2 tabs to create the audit plan. The first section here is where we can define as an annual plan or a multi-year plan. We can give some details such as the plan name, perhaps the plan start date. We can also detail here the scope of the plan, as well as perhaps the budgeted effort in days and the budgeted cost as well. In the Audit Candidates tab, these are the individual audits that are going to make up this particular plan. So we can see here, for example, I've got one here. This is an accounts payable transactions audit. And I can see my auditable entity that's going to be within this particular audit, as well as the risks that are going to be audited. And I can detail things such as the schedule. So at this stage of the planning, you may not know an exact month or an exact date, so you can perhaps put a particular time window in place. You can classify the audit as a financial audit or an operations audit, as well as detail things like who the audit manager and perhaps the lead auditor is going to be. From the risk-based scoping exercise that we've just done, we have what we call the audit advisor. And if I click on this audit advisor, what it does is it brings in to the view of your plan those auditable entities and their related risk ratings. So I can see here that the accounts receivable risk, which has actually been selected for this plan, was rated high. And we can see some fields here which are blank, but things like suggested years and next audit date, and these can be populated based on the risk rating that's given to a particular auditable entity. But I can go down and I can document my individual audit candidates. I can go here and perhaps select my next audit candidate. And in the same way, I can select my auditable entity, my related risks, set up what the schedule is, and also perhaps who the auditor is going to be for that particular audit. And you can imagine you may have a number of audit candidates in a yearly plan. So this audit plan would then go through perhaps a review cycle. We can see this particular one is pending approval. And once approved, these audit candidates which have been defined would then become audit projects. And it's when they're audit projects that you begin assigning individual tasks. That's when you perhaps send out the control tests as well as the individual checklists to the auditors to begin to complete. So if I click the Audit Projects tab, we can now see those audit projects. And I've got the ability to go in here and create a task. So if I select the one at the bottom here and select Create Task, the first thing we can do is select what type of task we want to assign. So whether it's a control test or whether it's a checklist, and in this case I'll select a test control. We can give the task a name. We can select the auditable entity, the related risk and the related control that we're going to be testing, as well as assign the actual task owner, which in this case would be the auditor itself. We can also define here a start date as well as a completion date, as well as provide instructions. And you may notice we've got this word symbol here, and this is because this is what we call a rich text editor field. And the rich text editor field basically have all the functionality that Microsoft Word has, so I can come in here and I can make things bold, I can underline things, and so on, to really make it very visually easy to read for those auditors, the instructions. I can go along and I can create multiple tasks here, and they would be sent out to the auditors, and those auditors would likely receive an email notification. That email notification would inform them that a task has been assigned to them, but it would also appear within their dashboard, and we'll see that dashboard in a moment. For large audit programs, we also have Gantt chart and resource scheduling capabilities. Here we can see our individual projects and perhaps the timeline for the project itself. And down the bottom here, we can see our resources. So in this case, we can see we've got 2 resources, Kara and Sandra, and we've got some unassigned resource requests. What we can do is we can begin to move these unassigned requests to an auditor. We can also create new tasks in here and assign them to specific projects and move these items around as needs be. If I just zoom out here, we can see a clearer picture of durations, and we can perhaps adjust the whole schedule of an audit in here as well. Also capture things like resource utilization, so we can see how much available time we have, perhaps per business unit, and record things like vacation and absences, and also highlight if anyone's been overbooked, perhaps booked too much time on a particular audit. If I now go back to the audit project tab I was in earlier, so I've gone ahead and created those tasks. As the audit manager, I've got the ability to view those tasks. So for example here, this particular audit's got 3 tasks assigned. I can click those 3 tasks, and I can perhaps see an overall status, which ones have been completed and approved versus which ones are in progress. I can also see from an audit manager standpoint things like issues that have been generated. So I can see here I've got a number of draft issues that have been generated by those auditors. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to log in as an auditor, so you can see how you go ahead completing the work papers and the field work and what it looks like as an auditor in the solution. So I'll just log out and I'll log in now as an auditor. So this particular view you'll see is a lot more granular. We simply have an area here of my tasks, and we can see here we've got a number of checklists as well as a number of testing of controls that needs to be completed. These tasks are visible in this dashboard, but they're also visible in the My Tasks bar, and they would also be visible in the auditor's calendar as well. But if I go ahead and click into this control test one at the top here, we can see the actual audit work paper here. So the first tab is just general details. So what auditable entity are we assessing? What are the risks? Perhaps the purpose and the rationale for the particular audit. In the control test section, I can see here my risks, and I can drill into these and see the individual controls. And if I click on the control, I can see perhaps the control name and descriptive information. I can go ahead and state whether this control is effective or not effective. How I've gone about testing this, was it a discussion, observation, or walkthrough? And I can also document here any work done and justifications and so on. I've also got the ability to attach documents, so that could be evidence or supporting information can be uploaded here, and it can also be categorized as well. As I'm going through and I'm testing these controls or doing my audit tasks, I've got the ability to generate audit findings and observations. So if I click the Findings and Observations tab, I can add an issue, and I can detail here, perhaps give it a title. I can give full descriptive information using that rich text editor field. I can also assign ownership to that issue, as well as other details, perhaps things like give the issue a rating if it's high severity or low severity, and perhaps that will decide on the workflow that particular issue goes through. So I can go through and I can complete all of my control tests that have been assigned to me here. Once I've done that, I would then send that for approval, and the audit manager in this case would receive this and could go through, look at the issues that have been identified, and also look at the tests, and perhaps send this back for clarification if required, or approve this particular audit that's been completed. So if I log out and log back in as the audit manager, as already stated, the audit manager can get a view perhaps of those issues that have been generated. And we call them at this stage draft issues. So I can see this particular audit at the bottom here has 5 draft issues. And if I click the number 5 here, I can see some details about those issues. So I've got here a listing of all the issues, and I've got the ability to go ahead and first of all view the issue itself, but also create action plans. So the ways that we're going to go ahead and fix this particular issue. And I can see this one has got 2 actions in place, and we've got here the action title, perhaps the action description, who the owner of that action is, and a due date for when that action needs to be completed. And the aim is here that for a single issue, you may have multiple actions, because actions may have to be assigned to multiple people and multiple business units within the organization. If I right-click any of these issues, I have the ability to go ahead and create a new action, and I can go and fill out a brand new one here. As the audit manager, you may also want to send these issues back to the auditee, so the people actually being audited, to get their feedback and perhaps get their input on the issue that's been identified. And if I click here, I've got the ability to send issues for review. And what I can do here is I can first of all select the issues that I want to send for review, and then I can select to send them either to someone internally within the organization or to send them back to the auditee, so that person being audited, for them to review and give feedback. And again, I can set a due date for when I'm expecting that feedback back from the auditee in this case. So if I log in as the auditee, we can get the view that they have the metric stream solution. So we can see here they've got a My To-Dos list as well as an auditee review task section here. And I can click into one of these issues that have been sent to the auditee for review. I can see here all of the issue details, perhaps any actions which the audit manager has already put in place. But as the auditee, I have the ability to respond. So I can come in here and I can either agree with the issue, or I can perhaps disagree and request clarification of why this issue has been identified. I may also want to detail suggested action plans or other details about this particular issue. But I can go ahead and I can put in my response, and I can go ahead and submit that back to the audit manager who's requested that review of the issue. The audit manager also has the ability to create the final audit report. So if I scroll down here, again going to this actions button, I've got the ability to create an audit report. And we can create here both the draft audit report as well as the final audit report. And the first thing we can do is select the issues that should be included. There may be some issues which perhaps we don't want to include in the final audit report. We can then select here the organisation to which this audit was relevant to, the year that this audit took place, and perhaps the overall audit rating, and we could say this particular one was effective. We can then use the rich text editor to create and generate an executive summary. So I'll just open that up and put just a summary here. And again, you can make this bold, you can format this summary as needs be because it's a rich text editor field. And then I can then select the report type, whether it's a draft report, and if it's a draft, you may want it to go to a number of users for review and approval, or in this case, I'll generate the final audit report. And if I just save this form, I've then got the ability to go ahead and create that draft audit report. And this will be generated in Word. So we can see here it's asking me would I like to export it into Word. I can submit that, and that's now downloaded a draft version of that report. And I can come up here and I can open up that report, and it's going to open up in Word format. And we can see this is fully formatted, so we can see here my audit title, the rating that I gave it, which was effective, some general details about the audit. If I scroll down here, I can see perhaps the summary that I put in place, a summary of the issues, the audit scope, as well as the actions that may be outstanding. And you can format this Word template so it can have tables, it can have content, it can also have the Deutsche Bank logo and colour scheme as needs be to make it look and feel exactly as you want the audit report to. You've then got the ability, you could save that report perhaps in PDF format, and you can attach that final report to the Metric Stream solution. So Metric Stream becomes your central repository of those audit reports, and they can be searched on and they can be stored centrally and managed as needs be. As the audit manager, another thing that I can do is formally close off the audit. And again, if I come down here to the Actions button, I've got the option here to select Audit Closure. And I can come down and I can perhaps put some closing comments. I can define exactly the entities and the risks that were completed, and even attach the final audit report here. And that can then go through a workflow to formally close this audit off for the year. For those audit issues still in the system, we can continue to track and manage them. And we can create reports here. So here we've got an issues overview, and we can see, for example, how old are those issues in the system. So we've got, for example, here over 23 that are beyond 3 months old, and we can drill into that 23, and we can see the issue title, perhaps who the issue owner is, and where in the organisation that particular issue sits. If I scroll down, we can also see here things like issues by their status, which ones are open, which ones are at the remediation or the pending approval stage, as well as things like issues by their rating, whether they're highly critical or lowly critical, and their priority as well. We can also get reports, perhaps aging by business unit, as well as issues by their source and priority as well. So just to summarize, I've taken you through at a high level the key audit components that the Metric Stream solution offers, including the audit universe, doing and conducting your risk assessments and audit scoping, the planning stage. We've touched on resource management, the execution, as well as the management of any audit issues that have been identified. We've also explored 4 audit personas. We've gone in at the audit manager, who had a very high level view, could see a lot of the high level metrics and the management reporting. The audit manager, who was involved in the planning and the scoping, as well as the generation of the audit report. The auditor, who actually performed the field work, created the issues, and the auditee, who was involved in reviewing a selection of those issues.